5 or 6. Yeah, because the cloud shouldn't take that long, I don't think. Who knows? Hello, welcome to WeatherWise. I am your host, meteorologist Nathan Scott. Severe weather season, it's here in Arkansas, and I want to talk about something that meteorologists always use this time of year. It's Doppler radar. We'll discuss what Doppler radar is and how it is used to really define severe weather and just weather types in general. Along with that, we'll talk about the anatomy of a supercell. We see supercells here in Arkansas from time to time. Those are those really nasty storms that can produce gigantic hail, but also huge tornadoes, and that was the case on March 14th. Finally, we'll talk about some clouds that you should recognize when there is maybe a supercell headed in your direction, how you can spot a wall cloud, a tail cloud, and other features that supercells may produce. But first, let's talk about Doppler radar, because you always see it. We always say Doppler radar shows this, Doppler radar shows that. So what is Doppler radar in the first place? Well, it is an instrument that all meteorologists use, and it basically is an instrument that sends out a pulse of energy. Radar stands for radar detection and ranging. And this pulse of energy goes away from the radar dome. For instance, this one's located into North Little Rock, and then it will make its way well away from the radar. And as the curvature of the Earth is an influence, that radar beam will tilt up. So it gets higher and higher above the surface the farther away that it is from the radar dome. This beam of energy will hit a raindrop, a snowflake, hailstone, and then that beam of energy will be backscattered, and some of that energy will come back to the receiver in the radar dome. How the information is interpreted is basically the more energy that the receiver gets from whatever is out there in the atmosphere, it will interpret it in different colors, and this is known as DBZs when we take a look at your actual weather radar. You're seeing two pulses of energy though, and that's because radar has changed really since the past 10 years. In 2013, we just had a horizontal pulse of energy that would make its way towards a storm, and that just told us limited amounts of information. But since 2013, the radars send out a horizontal and vertical pulse. This is known as dual pole Doppler radar, and this tells us valuable information, especially when it comes to a severe thunderstorm or a tornadic storm, because now we can use that information to detect what type of shapes are into the atmosphere. Are they similar or are they different? And usually, when you have just a shield of rain in a thunderstorm, it will turn out to be one color. And that is known as a high correlation coefficient. However, when you have a tornado, that tornado is picking up debris. It can be pieces of homes, trees, cars, whatever, and that debris can be interpreted as different shapes are happening within this sample that the radar beam is getting, and that will tell us, okay, we have a confirmed tornado on the ground. And we can actually tell you how strong that tornado is according to how far this lowering of the correlation coefficient can be spotted going from the cloud level higher and higher and higher. Of course, the stronger the tornado is, the higher that debris will go. 25, 30,000 feet, it could be, pieces of paper, but that pieces of paper mixed in with rain and hailstones will be interpreted as different types of shapes according to the radar. Radar works because of the Doppler shift. And the Doppler shift example is going to be, think about what happens when you have a train or an ambulance and that's coming towards you. You can hear that sound, and it gets higher and higher and higher the closer that it gets. And then as that train or ambulance passes you, then that sound gets lower and lower and lower. The frequency changes according to your perspective. And we use that for Doppler radar to determine, okay, are these raindrops, hailstones going away from the radar, or are they going towards the radar? And that makes it very important in defining rotation within a storm. So when we take a look at a radar sample, this is what you typically have. Lots of colors, and these colors tell us what's going on in the atmosphere. This is the reflectivity part of the radar. So this tells us what objects are happening into the atmosphere. And most likely, it's rain. When you have reds and oranges, that's typically heavy rain. And then you get into the lighter colors, the greens and the blues, then your intensity of the rain will be dropping. We can also detect hail with radar, and that's when you see colors more the purples and also the blacks. We also have other algorithms that can be used by dual pole Doppler radar to tell us more information on hail size. A situation that we always have going on here is supercell thunderstorms. And when you look at this, we have that classic hook echo. So we have the heavy rain, probably some hail. This is from the Hot Springs tornado back in 2024. And then also we have the velocity data. And this uses that Doppler shift I was talking to you about, the velocity. So when we take a look at this, we're watching for the different colors, because at the top of the screen you see toward and away. And that's the radar detecting the motion of what's going on in the atmosphere, if it's towards the radar or away from the radar. The radar is located in North Little Rock. So we're in Garland County, and the red is going away from the radar, the blue is going towards the radar, and these colors are picking up. So we have a green splotch there, pixel, and that's showing 80-mile-per-hour winds going towards the radar, and then the red is about 40 miles per hour going away from the radar. So when you add that together, that's almost 120 knots, or 120 miles per hour of shear. And that would give us an idea of how strong the tornado could be in that location. When you have a severe thunderstorm, another solution using radar is to basically just stop the scan and just focus on the storm, because usually the radar beam is just going around 360 degrees, and it's going low level and then mid level and then upper level, and just does these tilts over a period of time, which takes about 3 or 5 minutes. But when you have something known as supplemental adaptive intra-volume low-level scan, or more simply SAILS, that the National Weather Service can really focus in on one storm, because when you have these weak, short-lived tornadoes, if you don't have SAILS, you're not using that opportunity on radar, you may miss a tornado. It's happened before. I'm sure it's going to happen again, because sometimes tornadoes spin up so quickly, minute, 2 minutes, and by the time the radar scan gets back, it's gone. So it can actually happen in between the scans of the radar. I've seen it happen before, and I'm sure it's going to happen again. Radar coverage is very important, and here's a map of all the radars across the country. We notice some big lack of coverage or holes in the radar. Wyoming, Montana, there's not a lot of people out there. They don't see a lot of severe weather, so radar's not necessarily needed. But here in Arkansas, we do have a lack of radar coverage. Northeast Arkansas and also Southeast Arkansas. And here's an example, because with the curvature of the Earth, the radar beam tilts up. And that radar beam, once it reaches like Sharp County and maybe the community of Ashflat, the beam from North Little Rock could be 10,000 feet above the surface. Yeah, we have other radars around the region, Springfield, but that one's 12,000 feet above the surface. Memphis, 11,000 feet above the surface. So if there was a tornado, and we've seen it happen, this just happened recently with Cave City back on March 14th, the radar data is not as good. It's not as clear, and we're not getting a good sample of what's happening closer to the ground. It could miss the tornado. We may not know a tornado is actually on the ground until it lofts debris. And I think that was the case really in Cave City because, yes, we saw rotation into, 10,000, 11,000 feet, but it was hard to depict because that's also where the low-level jet was. So it makes it much more difficult to really pick out low-level rotation when your radar beam is that high. So hopefully, maybe in the future, there will be more radars to cover up all these holes. That's just a wait-and-see situation. There are some companies that are trying to help with that situation, but haven't heard anything recently on exactly who is getting the data from those certain companies. We'll certainly keep you updated. All right, next we're talking about the anatomy of a supercell. What is a supercell in the first place, and what are some features that you need to watch out for? Supercells, those are big thunderstorms, and those are the type of storms that produce gigantic hail and also some of the most devastating tornadoes. We see supercells here in Arkansas, and we saw them on March 14th. So what is a supercell? A supercell is a thunderstorm that has a rotating updraft. When we take a look at the diagram, there's a lot of information on here. This is all by the National Weather Service, but basically you've got two parts of a thunderstorm. First, as the cloud is growing, it has the warm air. That warm air continues to lift because it is warmer than its surrounding environment. The clouds will continue to grow, and then eventually that warm air will cool, condense, and changes over from the cloud. With more moisture, you start to get raindrops and eventually hailstones in the cloud. Then, with a general thunderstorm, the raindrops, the hailstones, they get heavier and they will start to fall back down. So you have the updraft as the warm inflow of the thunderstorm, and then with the raindrops and the hailstones coming back down to the ground that probably evaporate before it reaches the surface with the hailstones typically with a general thunderstorm. But you get that cool rush of air that usually arrives before the rain arrives, and that is the downdraft of a thunderstorm. It's that nice cool breeze that you see after a hot, humid day for the most part. When you have the updraft and the downdraft with a vertically stacked situation, the downdraft will eventually cut off the warm inflow and the thunderstorm will die. In this case, though, a supercell thunderstorm, we have a tilted updraft. And you notice that swirly, curly Q that's happening, and that is the updraft that's also rotating because we have shear in the atmosphere. And shear is when you have wind direction that changes with speed and also height as you go from the surface all the way up to the cloud level. We certainly do get that here when we have a wind from the south or southeast of the surface, and then you've got those winds with a low-level jet kicking into gear from the southwest, much higher in speed. And this allows a rotating updraft that will continue to maintain a very strong thunderstorm. Some features you want to notice here, we have the forward flank downdraft. So that is the one side of the storm in front of the storm for the most part. And then on the back side, because of evaporative cooling, you have what's known as the rear flank downdraft. So on this side of the supercell, there may not be any rain whatsoever, but you could still get some really high winds on the rear flank downdraft. The most concerning part, though, of course, is going to be where the updraft is located and where we have a lot of lift going into the cloud, eventually so much lift that there's a wall cloud that develops. Because there's so much lift and moisture going into the cloud, it will develop a cloud right at the base of this supercell thunderstorm, and this is known as the pedestal cloud or a wall cloud. And if you see that wall cloud rotate, that's usually a precursor that you're going to have a tornado. Along with the supercell, very large hail, because this updraft Updrafts could be 80, 90, maybe as much as 100 miles per hour. So that's going to hold up the raindrops and the hailstones, and they're going to continue to build on one another. And that's when you can get hail, softball size, baseball size hail with this type of situation. So these are massive thunderstorms. And in a distance, this is what you would see. If you were on a flat field, you could look for about 20 miles, 30 miles away. This is what you would see out into Texas and Oklahoma because the visibility is so crazy there. You would see this entire structure of the cell most likely. And this area is known as the overshooting top. So the updraft is so powerful that it goes past the other part of the atmosphere known as the tropopause into the stratosphere for a brief amount of time. If you see an overshooting top in the distance that maintains itself for about 15-30 minutes, you know you have a beast of a storm to deal with. So there is the anatomy of a supercell, and also along with that we'll talk about a shelf cloud in just 1 second. But what does it look like on radar? Well, we always talk about it. It's that appendage. It's that hook echo signature. So here's a diagram of what happens with that. We get that kidney bean shape, first of all. So as the updraft is growing, you can see what's happening with this storm motion, and the winds in the upper parts of the atmosphere push the moisture and the rain downstream. So that's why you get that little kidney bean shape. And then eventually it continues to grow. And that's what we were watching on March 14th as every little cell was popping up. They kind of had these type of signatures. But of course, here's the worst type. It's a hook echo. And that's just because you have what's going on with the warm air going into the storm, the cooler air, the rear flank downdraft coming on the other side, and that allows this rotation to develop. So here is the example again from I believe it's Hot Springs. This is the Hot Springs Village tornado. This is the supercell. I'm just going to get up here now and just kind of point out things here for you. So this purple is going to be the hail core, and that's where you're going to see a lot of hail. So here's what you're thinking. Here's the updraft. It's going into the storm, and then there's the hail core, and then with this upper parts of the atmosphere, the low-level jet is pushing all the rain in this direction. So if you are in this area and if this storm is going east, you know, you will get the rain, you might get the hail, but the worst part of the storm is right here where that hook echo is located. So when we break down each individual area here, let me go back to that, because we have the forward flank downdraft, this entire area. So as the air comes down, you'll get that cool breeze in this part of the area. Then on this side, this is the rear flank downdraft, and the wind could be as far west as, you know, Lake Ouachita State Park. But this is going to be the most dangerous part of the storm. And if you are a storm chaser, you want to be down here looking into the storm. You don't want to be here. You don't want to be in the bear's cage, is what they say, with the large hail. And you don't want to be in this area because if the tornado is going this way, you're going to run right into it. It's going to be rain wrapped. You won't see it until it's right in front of your face. So the best area to be viewing this type of situation is going to be down to the south as long as this storm's going to the east. A lot of supercells here in Arkansas go from the southwest to the northeast. This one did a little bit more of an easterly direction, but March 14th, we had those cells go pretty much southwest to northeast. Here is the other part of the radar data. There's that tight couplet that we always talk about. So there's where the mesocyclone is going to be located, and that's where certainly the tornado made its way into that parts of Hot Springs. So this is a different storm. This is a supercell, but this was the one that affected Hot Springs, not Hot Springs Village, last year. What type of clouds does this produce if you are an observer? What does a wall cloud look like? What does a horseshoe cloud look like? We're going to have that as we wrap up Weatherwise coming up. Let's say you were having a nice summer picnic out by the lake and you saw this cloud headed in your direction. It's time to batten down the hatches. Now, this one may not produce a tornado, but it will produce the potential of some gusty winds, and rain is surely to follow behind this. This is known as a shelf cloud. It looks like a tsunami pretty much happening in the sky, or a tidal wave. But there is a simple explanation for this ominous view. And it's all because, remember when I talked about the downdraft, that cooler rush of air, well, that cold air is heavier. Cold air is heavier than warm air. So as the colder air rushes away from the storm, it pushes up that warm and humid air. With that warm and humid air rising above this cold air, it cools, condenses, and forms this overhang cloud. It's a shelf cloud. You see that? It's heading your direction. Get ready. You're most likely going to have some gusty winds and also some heavy rain. Now, this type of cloud, that's what you really want to watch out for. This is out into the Great Plains, the structure of the thunderstorm here, and what you notice is here's the base of the storm, but here is the low-hanging wall cloud. And if this wall cloud is rotating, that means a tornado could be happening any moment. Also, tail cloud, or this is also known as the beaver's tail. This tells us there's a lot of warm air being drawn up into this supercell thunderstorm, and that can also be a precursor to the potential of a tornado. The forward flank downdraft is well off to the right part of the screen, and then you have this horseshoe area, and that's what develops the hook echo signature on radar. When we break it down even more, looking at the horseshoe area, this is going to be your rear flank downdraft. So this is where there's going to be some really gusty winds happening, but where the tornado is located, it's going to be on the northern side of this horseshoe. And you point out here with the heavy rain, this is going to be the hail. This is where visibility is really obscured. But then the tornado, you can't spot it because it's likely behind the rain. Here's another example for you. This is for another area of scud. Looks like a tornado. It's not a tornado, certainly very ominous. I mean, you see that there, and it looks like there's a funnel on the ground. This is a scary situation for a lot of people, and actually something like this would get mistaken for a funnel cloud or a tornado. But you notice the ragged nature of this. And then also, if this was a film, it wouldn't be rotating. It'd be broken up in fragments, and you would certainly see the lifting of the air. And this does show there's a lot of lifting happening within the storm. But you can see this type of situation even with a general thunderstorm when you look off before the actual storm arrives. So if you see something like that, certainly watch out for it. But anytime you see rotation in the clouds, that's a clear sign that you want to get to your tornado safe place. Severe weather season continues here in Arkansas through April, May, and then eventually ends in June. So hopefully things will quiet down because we've already had a nasty round of tornadoes in northeast Arkansas, and we don't need any more. For WeatherWise, I'm meteorologist Nathan Scott. Thanks for tuning in. If you have any pictures, videos, or questions about severe weather, please send them in my direction. You can email me at nscott@thv11.com, or you can reach out to me on my Facebook page. Just put in the search engine, Nathan Scott THV11. Thanks for watching and have a great day. I'll see you soon.